Welcome to the Rich Mind Podcast.
As always, that's what I'm trying to do with this new pivot of the podcast. I just want to have a conversation about topics that have been big for me, that I think that if the listeners will just internalize them, think about them maybe even a little bit more differently than what they're accustomed to, I really think that they can really start making some significant changes in their life, positive changes like it's done for me. And today I want to dive into that topic. Well, how often have you heard the phrase, Greg? Be, do, have. Is that something that you've heard in a lot of different places?
Yeah, I've heard it here and there on, podcasts and everything, but it's not one of the more popular topics that I've heard in personal development. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into, the framework and kind of, just what we're going to talk about. And I think, how people maybe have it a little mixed up in the sequence, but we can kind of get into that a little bit more.
Yeah. And that's where I want to take the conversation today, right? Is I think folks, and I fall completely into this myself, meaning you just get it backwards or you get it mixed up. You're not focusing on the right order, I guess. And when you're not focusing on it in the right order, I think that once again, you're starting to get, I don't say negative results, but just maybe you're not achieving as much as you would like out there in the world. So the be, do, have. So I've heard that many times myself in different podcasts, like you said, as I started out on my entrepreneurial journey and my personal development journey, I started hearing that a lot of places. And I heard something from the late, great Jim Rohn. We've referred to Jim Rohn many, many times on the podcast. So folks, once again, if you haven't found Jim Rohn's content, you need to do that first off. Go out there and get Challenge to Succeed would be a great start. Any of his books, he's got a few books out there, but definitely start consuming some of Jim Rohn's content. But one thing he said that resonated with me so much at the time, it took me a little bit to kind of let it sink in, like what he was really meaning with what he said. But his quote was, in order to have more, you must first become more. And in order to become more, you must first work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And I used to think, so this was back when I still had my W-2 job and I was grinding and working and doing all the quote unquote normal stuff, right? Just head down, trying to achieve and get, right? The stuff, the money, the promotions, the whatever. And when he started saying that to me, it really started making me question like the order, like I said, the order of the way I was of going about it. And so now that I've started to flip that on its head and focus more on the be, do, and then the have versus the way we flipped around. Sometimes I think we focus on the having, or we're focused on so much on the doing that we stop focusing on the being and becoming. So to me, I think those two words go right with each other. So with that said, when I realized that within myself, I started to try to focus on, okay, well, who do I have to become in order to achieve the things that I want to achieve, right? Whatever it is, it could be a monetary number, it can be a status number, it doesn't matter what the thing is that you're trying to achieve, but you have to become it and be it first. And that was tough for me at the beginning. How about you? Any thoughts on that so far?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think, working from, the have, be, do model, I think it'll actually stop a lot of people. And I've been guilty of this in the past, saying, well, if I only had, $50,000 to start this business, then I could become a successful business owner, which would allow me to, do the things that I want to do with or whatever that looks like. Right. And I think if you can basically stop yourself by saying, well, I don't have that money or that skill, so this is probably not going to work out because I'm missing the key factor. But like you're saying, that is not the case, because you really have to work on yourself and basically your identity. You have to I say this in a loving way, but you have to trick yourself into being the person that you're currently not and the person that you want to become. And it's kind of like a leap sometimes of well, is this going to work? And, am I going to fulfill this thing? And when you do, it's amazing. So, and I think, we've both been on that side of it, but there's definitely a leap of, is this going to work? Do I have the confidence to pull this off? Which is maybe coming from me, but I'm sure a lot of other people might have that belief as well. But yeah, I love the fact that you're flipping the be, do, have on its head and really reorganizing it. And like you said, using Jim Rohn as an example, I mean, he is, he's the top for the reason, right? So he's one of the best.
Definitely one of the best success mentors out there for sure. It's unfortunate that he's passed and hasn't been. Unfortunately never saw him live. I wish I could have gone to an event. I can only imagine what that would have been like, right? Being in the room, listening to all that wisdom. Goes into that K part of the peak framework that we've developed, right? The knowledge, the wisdom coming from folks like Jim Rohn. And another person of wisdom I've spoken about many, many times is Earl Nightingale. And in the Lead the Field program, his very first section, and this is where I started to work on myself, the whole being part. So I heard Jim say that in order to have more, I must first become more. And so then I was like, okay, what does that even mean? What do I do? And so then in another program, and that's where the Lead the Field with Earl Nightingale, he talked about in the very first section that the magic word. And I'm like, I read that and I heard him even say it at the beginning. I'm like, the magic word, what does that mean? And so I kept continuing to listen, and that magic word is attitude. And he kept saying it over, attitude. Attitude is how you show up. Attitude is who you are. Attitude is who you're being. Attitude is who you're becoming. Attitude is a choice. And I'll leave it there. I could probably almost recite the whole thing word for word. I mean, I've listened to it so many different times. But the whole point is that when I realized that it was my attitude, how I was showing up in my day-to-day activities, how I was showing up for myself, how I was showing up for my family, for my work environment. So one thing I used to be, and you might be out there having these same challenges, folks, is that, I used to sometimes have a little bit of road rage, and I wouldn't get crazy. I mean, you've seen road rage out there where people just like really go just nuts. Like, I'm not talking about that, but I would just get angry to myself or with, I'm in my own car. No one else is with me. It's just me. But I would just start flying off the handle, yelling, cussing, honking horns, just going stupid over what? Over what? Because that person cut me off or that person, whatever. But I wanted to use that as an example is that once I started to think about, okay, well, who do I need to become to make sure that doesn't bother me anymore? I mean, I don't know what that person's going through. I don't know if that person didn't see me. I don't know. So I was attaching a meaning to something that may or may not be true. And so that was where my attitude had to change. And so when I was catching myself in real time, and I talk about that a lot, as I've gone down this journey, I start to catch myself in real time. Then I was able to fix it. And when I mean fix it, I just mean control it. And so then I started to flip that on its head of, okay, when I would get triggered, talk about triggers a lot, I would be able to then question it. Why is it happening? Where is it coming from? And a lot of times it stems back to this be, do, have. I was always focused on having. So it's like even that road rage. I was upset because that person took something from me, or it's because I didn't achieve whatever, that lane or that spot or that whatever. That might be a little bit of a crazy example, but at the same time, it was the same thought process that I had, that I needed to go out and get. I needed to go have, versus focusing on myself and understanding that the being part was the most important. So I just want to leave that with the Earl Nightingale's, the attitude. When he said that to me, and once again, over and over and over, it really started to get me to think differently. And when I began to think differently and feel differently, then I started to be able to do different things, which then allowed me then to achieve more and have more in the long run. So that was kind of a long-winded thing. Greg, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, no, that was great example. And I think just pulling out of that example is, you mentioned it basically, reacting versus responding, which is, we can talk about that. It's probably a whole nother episode of, why am I thinking this way? Why am I being triggered? Instead of just flying off the handle, being triggered, honking your horn, because we've all been there before. Right? But
too many times.
Yeah, but you're able to, really control that and really basically consciously think of what's going on right now instead of just reacting and, doing all those things that we've all done in the past. And another gentleman that I've been listening to him a lot recently, is Joe Dispenza. And he has a similar, so I wrote this thing down. It's basically similar to what we're talking about today. And he says, change your self-talk, you change your beliefs, which change your actions, which change your results. So very similar to the be, do, have, exactly what we're talking about, just in
that's
different
exactly
wording.
what we're talking about. Yeah, just putting it in different words, right?
Yeah.
So say that again. That was good.
So I wrote it down. It's change your self-talk, you change your beliefs, which changes your actions, which changes your results.
So a lot of times in my household, and it's conversations with my wife and I, and Greg, we've had conversations about these types of things as well, but it's like the chatter that's going on in your mind, right? So that's the self-talk. It's that voice that's going on in your mind right now. I mean, it's talking to you literally right now. It is in mine. It is in yours. It is in all of ours. And if you don't control it, like what you just said, right? Control your thoughts, control the chatter. I call it chatter. Then you can control those beliefs. We've talked about different beliefs that we've been brought up to believe that may or may not be true. I'm not saying they are. I'm not saying they aren't. But if you don't take control and then question them, then you can't take different actions, which is once again going to take care of those results that you're looking for. And so I think that when people focus on the results only. So at this time of this recording, we're at the beginning of the year 2025, and a lot of times we're talking about what we want to achieve and the goals and the stuff, that what do we want to get, what do we want to do. But I think that if people would take a few moments and just really think about that internal being, that internal, who am I? How am I acting? What is my attitude towards whatever that's going on in your current environment? I think that you would quickly start seeing a better result faster. Might be not in the same way that you're used to, but once again, I think people focus more on the doing, right? So it's like, let's say we've talked about business on the podcast. Let's say you want to start a business. So you just go out there and start trying to okay, well, what business do I need to do? And what do I need to set up an LLC, or do I need to set up a bank account, or do I need to, all this doing, right? Try to achieve this thing instead of thinking about, okay, who is it that I need to become? Who is it that I need to work on myself, that self-doubt? So the imposter syndrome, right? So I guarantee you that if you step out into this entrepreneurial world, and if you start a business, if you start a podcast, if you start any of it, you're going to have imposter syndrome. You're going to have self-doubts. You're going to have worries. You're going to have fears. And that's the part that I think that if people would focus on that as much, if not more so at the beginning, then they would see themselves through. That's that resilience piece that gets lost. Because as soon as you run up against those obstacles, because you're only focusing on the doing and the having, then you fall right back into your old ways, your old habits, which is typically just not necessarily getting the things that you want. And you're just like, oh, well, I guess I'm just not cut out for this success stuff, or this podcaster stuff, or this whatever it is, right? This business owner stuff, or a real estate investor's, it's whatever that outcome that you're looking for. You revert back to your old ways if you don't focus on the being and the focusing on yourself, your attitude, all that first.
Yeah, no, well said. And, going to the have part, that's, as we talk about, setting goals and everything, that's just the end result, right? That's just to me anyway, that's what's going to happen when you become the person that you're going to become, and then you do the actions. And then the having is just, that's what shows up, right? So I know a lot of people, when we set goals, is, you want to lose 10 pounds or whatever. Yeah, that's the outcome, but you really have to focus on, your identity as a healthy person, or who are you going to become as a healthy person? What would a healthy person, wake up and do, or not do, or eat or not eat? And then that goes into, those actions, just doing those actions. And then at the end of whatever amount of time, you're going to achieve those results. And that could be with anything, with any goal that you set, business, relationships, weight loss. But yeah, I really love the be, do, have, and how you kind of simplified it down to that sequence and really drove it home with those examples. Yeah.
So the idea of, once again, becoming. So we'll use the weight loss as a goal, or as, just a hypothetical goal we'll talk about here today. And once again, it's that person if that person wanted to achieve that goal, who does that person need to be? So you just need to list those things out even in their own mind. They need to be determined, right? They need to make a dedicated decision. And what I mean by it's not just a decision, it's a dedicated decision. It's like, no matter what, I'm going to get on this treadmill, or I'm going to get on this bike, and I'm going to get on this, I'm going to go out for a walk, whatever your form of exercise is going to be. And it needs to be a committed, dedicated decision. Folks that achieve things don't go waffling back and forth. They stick to a decision. Now, if that decision leads to a path of negative result, like you can see it's not going to be a good thing, then yeah, you can pivot. I like to pivot. That's what the word I try to use. But as far as you cannot stop, what are a few other traits I'm trying to think of that you really have to have if you're going to then achieve these great things in your life, part of the becoming. Anything else coming to your mind at all as far as I start down that little bit of a rabbit trail, Greg?
Yeah, I say as far as traits go, at least speaking for myself, it's traits like having self-confidence. There's a lot of self-doubt when you're starting a business or when you're hopping on a podcast and you're not, a public speaker, that kind of thing. A lot of resilience. I think, like you said, you're going to be going down a path and you realize within your goal, this is not the right path, but I'm still within my goal. Okay, let me pivot. Let me go to another path, and just being resilient and really have like some self-compassion for yourself too, and not beating yourself up of, oh, I screwed up. I went down this path. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should just quit, because, like you said, you have to really commit to the process, right? And have that dedication. And the only way you fail is when you quit, right? I mean, that's with anything, with any business owner, any podcaster, any weight loss, journey. If you stick it through, you'll get there eventually. So those are the traits that kind of just came to mind for me anyway.
So Robert Herjavec, does that sound familiar, that name to you, Greg?
Yes, I can't picture it though.
So he's on Shark Tank.
Yes, okay.
He's been on Shark Tank since the beginning. And so folks, once again, just another resource. If you're into business and it's a great resource just to learn some terminology. They talk deals. It's just a great show. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but if you're not, go check it out. It's fantastic. But Robert Herjavec, I was just scrolling through social, and last night he was talking about the idea that a lot of times we'll overestimate what we can get accomplished in a year, but underestimate, and he used the time frame of 10 years. And he was talking about for himself that 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, he was struggling. He said he was living in a rented apartment, didn't know what and how his business was going to succeed. They were struggling. He didn't really go into details about that, but the point is that 10 years ago, and I get it, 10 years ago, when you think about it, it's a long time. But in hindsight, when you look back 10 years, it's like, where did that time go? At least that's been my experience. That with some action, with some being, he was talking about how he had to become this leader, this business owner, this obviously became a TV personality, so he had to be good at that portion of it. So in a process of 10 years of working on himself and working on his craft and building out his business, he then has achieved more so than he's ever thought could ever be possible. I've heard others say things similarly to that, but that was actually something I saw yesterday, which I thought would coincide with kind of what we're talking about here today, is that just because we're feeling like we're down and out or we don't have the ability to achieve what we're looking for, we can always pivot. We can always change ourselves, right? Because it's our decision. It's up to us. We can make those decisions. We can, so everything, okay, let me put this one out there to you. So I'm thinking in real time. I've mentioned David Nagel. So one thing he mentions to me, he's not talking directly to me. He's talking to us. But I listen to him so often, I feel like he's talking directly to me. He talks about our greatest gift. Our greatest gift is our ability to choose. The greatest gift we've been given as human beings is our ability to choose. But it's also the hardest thing, because everything that we do, every sentence that comes out of my mouth, every fumble that I make, everything is a choice. And if you take ownership of that, really focus on the being, who you're becoming, right? Then start focusing on the doing, things are going to start falling into place. And so I really take my choices in-house, meaning I try not to, like you said, responding versus reacting. It's two different things. I learned that as well. It's two different things. And folks, maybe you're hearing those two words and you're like, okay, those two sound the same. Or, I've always thought that those are both the same thing. And it's like, So reacting is just, like you said, flying off the handle, not really giving it much thought before you do or say anything. And responding is really taking it in. And it can be a quick response, but you're really like internalizing it and realizing that you have the ability to make a choice how to respond. And just even doing that action alone will help you become this person that you're looking to be. And that's where it starts to become fun, for sure.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I love listening to David Nagel. You actually turned me on to him probably about a year ago. So he's speaking directly to me as well, which is really cool.
Talking to me. He doesn't even know who I am, but he's talking directly to me.
Oh yeah, he starts every episode like, "Hey Greg, listen up. This is for you, buddy."
Exactly. So, yeah, you with the title is like, wow, he's talking directly. How does he know?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's in my head, but
exactly.
But yeah, no, I thought about that as well because for a long time, I think I was on that autopilot of, well, I don't have a lot of choices in my life. And we really do. I mean, we don't have a lot of control over some things in our lives. I think that's a different story, but the choice that we make every second, we have that choice. And, kind of going back to the Joe Dispenza quote is, change your self-talk, which is, we talked about change your beliefs. That begins with a choice, right? Do I want to stick with my old self-talk, the one that is running on autopilot all the time? It might not be the best, healthiest self-talk, but it's normal and comfortable,
right? Which
makes me feel, comfortable in my comfort zone. But is it the best thing that's going to move me forward to achieve my goals? Yeah, maybe not. And that's where we really have to analyze, what, like you said, what we're putting in our heads and what we're thinking every second of the day, which is, it's a lot of work. You know what I mean? It's not the faint of heart here.
No, it is. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. And that's what I would encourage you folks to really start the process. Once you begin down this journey of working on yourself and you start to see some of the positive results that we're talking about, man, it's an amazing thing where you've come. I refer to my wife all the time. It's like, wow, I can't imagine who I was, who I used to be. I caught myself yesterday. I caught myself even just before we jumped on here today, Greg, as far as I get triggered. I call them triggers. I get triggered by a thought or I get triggered by something that's going on in my environment. Years ago, I would have reacted differently. And I don't mean I would just get angry it's almost like that's kind of how it sounds. Like you're getting angry. I talked about the car incident, right? I would just fly off the handle and yell and scream. And that's not what I mean, but it would just send me down a rabbit trail of choices that not good. They would, it would just put me in a depression sometimes. It would just make me not feel good physically sometimes. But when I've become and gotten into the active part of this process of becoming, I literally catch it in real time. It's like I can hear, it's almost like an outer body experience. I can see it coming to me, right? I can see the thoughts coming and I try to stop them in real time and then change those choices, change those, how I'm going to respond to that input that I'm receiving, whether it's a thing, an event, whatever that is. So I try to on the podcast, and I'm trying to right now, Greg, maybe you can help me here as we start to bring those in for a close, to try to put those thoughts and ideas into words. It's one of those things, it's not easy because it is an internal thing. It's not something that you can physically do. It's not like I can go have surgery and, remove these thoughts and remove these triggers, and that's not what this is, which is unfortunate because that would be the, take a pill and everything's going to be fine, right? And that's not what this is. It's an internal battle and it's an internal work that once you get good at it, you can start seeing things. Am I wording that well? Is there any questions, any thoughts or anything to add to anything that I've shared with there as far as how to handle any of those triggers?
No, I love that last part. And I think you're a little bit further down the road than I am, because sometimes I will react, and it'll take me a little bit longer to realize that I'm reacting instead of actively thinking, okay, calm down. How do I want to think about this? Is this the end of the world? Having those logical thoughts kind of take over and just consciously think about that instead of having the subconscious routine of, hey, I just got cut off, oh, that guy's an idiot, whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then catching yourself. So you're saying you're catching yourself very quickly, which is amazing. And I'm still actively working on that process because, things happen day to day where you're like, oh, that's, that thing just happened. You're like, oh, and then wait a minute. All right. It's not the end of the world. I'll be fine. How do I want to think about this? But sometimes it'll take me 30 seconds, 5 minutes to get there.
Right.
Other times. So it just, like you said, it's really an active process. And I'm really happy that you're there. And I can't wait to kind of get further down that road because it's a fun journey for sure. But like we were talking about, it's a lot of work, and I'm really, I'm putting in the work, but I'm really looking forward to that reward at the end there.
Yeah, so that's where I would encourage you folks to try it. It's a choice. You've got to choose to listen to that chatter, listen to your surroundings, listen to things that are going on in your environment. And what I mean, I don't just mean just like sounds. I just mean like people, right? What are they doing? What are they saying? You might get triggered at work. You might get triggered at home. You might watch something on the internet and you get triggered by those things. And yes, so that you said that absolutely correct for myself, meaning it used to take me longer days. I would get triggered and it used to take me days to get it back under control. I'm down now to usually within a few minutes or even a few hours of getting myself calmed back down to where I feel like I'm back in control of myself. Once again, that's been a process. That's not been, so when I heard Earl Nightingale's Lead the Field and I listened to the magic word, it didn't just like changed overnight, right? That's not how it was. It was more of it's been an ever-going process of taking control of those reactions versus those responses. And then you start to practice it. You start to realize, okay, yeah, that was not the right response. So the trigger that I had yesterday, for example, I journaled about it. Okay. I journaled about it and I was like, I'm going to report back in tomorrow's entry about how I'm going to respond to this today. So I gave it a different response that I normally would. So I gave it a different response that I normally would not, meaning I used to react to that trigger differently. And I chose to react to it a different way to see what would happen. And lo and behold, the way I responded to it the different way turned out to be the best way. And it was the right way. And so I wrote about that this morning in my journal. I was like, well then, so it's like an aha moment. It's like, yeah, that's exactly how I need to keep working on these things. So it's going to happen again. So the next time I get triggered by it's because it's going to happen again by, could not be the exact same situation, but something similar. I'll know that if I react or respond to it in this certain way, I can almost predict what the outcome is going to be. And that's been that bead you have. That's where it's been the most important part of my life and my journey up to this point.
Yeah, no, I love that. The fact that you recognized it and you see the result. Like you said, it's not going to be immediate, but you saw it from yesterday to today.
Yeah.
And now it'll continue to, take that action down that path because that's going to create a new habit and a new connection in your brain. Like, hey, this actually works if I do it this way instead of the old way. And then you're becoming, a better person, a better version, a new, whatever you want to call that. That's awesome. That's the way to do it.
When I would have those reactions in the past, and it would send me down these negative rabbit trails for days, right? So I would have multiple bad days in a row, meaning just a bad attitude. So there again, it goes back to that attitude word. I'd have a bad attitude towards my family, towards my coworkers, towards whatever, right? Because I was in this negative space. Whereas now I can have these different responses, different choices, and I'm able to get it back out. And so then my attitude stays, I don't want to say normal because I don't know if there is a normal per se, but it stays more positive, stays more optimistic versus always looking at the negative. And so that's, once again, that's where the biggest change has been for me, is it's able to flip it back to a positive and keep it more positive consistently, which is just, like I said, that's what's changed my life. Is it's like, I've never been an optimistic person about much at all, but just because the way we've talked about upbringing and just beliefs and all of that stuff. But once again, as I put the work in for myself, you're right. I'm seeing different results, which is, that's when it becomes exciting. It's like, wow. So today I'm going to have a great day. I know we're hopping on here today, having a good time with this conversation. And then when I jump off here today, I'm going to spend some time with my family. It's going to be a great day. Whereas before in my past self, prior to personal development, who knows what today would have been, right? I probably have been, just down, just not happy, just not feeling good. And I really want that for everybody as much as we possibly can, which is why I try to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I love it. And what I'd say to, the listeners in the audience is try exactly what we're talking about here, put in the work. You're going to fumble like we talked about, and it's going to take longer than you probably want it to take or you expect it to take, but it's worth it in the end. And just try it and find, whatever kind of method works for you. I'm sure the way Randy does it may be a little bit different than I do it, but as long as it works for you and it works for me, and that's the whole point, is to get there, right?
Yeah, 100%. Just do the work. Just put in make the decision. It's just the decision to try, to get in the driver's seat versus it just life happening to you. It's happening for you. And just get in the driver's seat, make some different choices, it's going to be difficult. And when difficult sounds bad, but it's not. It's just a challenge. It's the outcome is an amazing thing. At least it has been for me. And I'm nowhere near where I want to be. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm like this. I've got it all figured out, because I do not. David Nagel still talks to me every single week, which is fantastic. I'm just learning, right? Continuous learning. So, man, I think we'll probably wrap this one up here, put a bow on this one. This has been a lot of fun. I get going down these little rabbit trails in my own mind, and it's like I just keep chattering and talking and that kind of thing. Hopefully it's been valuable for the listeners. Hopefully it's been valuable for you too, Greg.
Yeah, no, that's why we're on this podcast, right? So yeah, this has been a great episode. I think, Be Do Have. I think the audience is going to get a lot of value from this one. And just to kind of tee up next week's next
what are we
episode.
Gonna talk? Yeah, you brought this one to me. What are we going to talk about? It kind of just goes along with this Be Do Have this theory as well. What do you have?
Yeah, so I want to talk about relationships and how it relates to pretty much anything. Building a business, personal relationships, family relationships. Those are going to be a little bit different. And just some techniques or some takeaways of successful things that, Randy and I have done and kind of experienced. So just kind of looking to dive into, the relationship aspect of everybody's lives.
Love it. Because yes, once you start to work on yourself, then you're going to have to obviously start bringing some folks into your life. And if you don't have this piece figured out for yourself, and then the relationships as well, once again, it just creates another challenge, right? Something to work on, work through. So yeah, this conversation we'll have about building lasting, great relationships, with personal relationships, even with yourself, right? You're having a relationship with yourself, just who you are. That's where the being comes in. So yeah, that's going to be a fun conversation. So folks, if you have enjoyed this episode today, thank you so much for keeping and staying with us here to this part of the episode. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas, anything that has to do with the topics that we're talking about, if you have any things that you would like for us to share, I'm trying to share in real stories, like real things that are going on with me, so that hopefully they'll be a little bit more relatable than just theories. Sometimes you'll read a book or you'll listen to some folks and they don't necessarily try to tie it in with some actionable or some thoughts that are like relatable. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I know Greg's doing that as well. But anyways, if you have any questions about anything we're talking about, you can send us an email at info@richmind.co. Maybe in the subject line this time, just be do have, just one word, 3 words, doesn't really matter. And that'll, show us that this episode has inspired you to take some action, reach out to us, and we'll help you any way we possibly can. I know that the personal development piece has been by far the biggest thing that I've done for myself. And that's where I want that for you as well, the listener. I know it's been a big thing for Greg and his life and his family and where he's going. So yeah, we can always achieve more. We can always go get more, but it's the being. It's the be and that part of the phrase. That's if you focus there. I'm confident if you focus there, you're going to be able to do more. And then obviously you're going to be able to have more at the end of the day. So once again, appreciate you being here. Appreciate your time and attention. If you wouldn't mind sharing this with your family and friends, we'd greatly appreciate that as well. And I'll look forward to coming back with the next episode. We're going to dive into some relationships. What does that even mean? How does that impact your life? How does that impact your business? Yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation. So join us back on the next episode. We'll talk to you very soon. Until then, bye now.
Thank you for joining us today on the Rich Mind Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share it with someone you know. Also, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite platform and never miss an episode. One last thing, don't ever forget that your mind is the first place where wealth is created. Keep dreaming big, take action, and together, let's build wealth, a legacy, and a life we love.